Ladies and gentlemen, we are live!
I'm Jerry.
I'm Kevin.
And I'm Tom.
It's time!
Live from the CSB studios in Westbury, New York.
It's the Tom and Jerry Sports Show.
Featuring co-host Kevin Dolan and the host that's been here since day one, Jerry Napoleonello. On Zeno Radio.
Tom and Jerry Sports Show live on Zeno Radio. I'm Jerry Napoleonello. Thanks for deciding to spend your afternoon with us. Got a lot to talk about today. We got our Final Four. The new NFL year is about 3 weeks old. Many players have new homes, and the NFL has passed some new rules. We'll go over those. The number to call, 605-562-7085. Press 5 to be heard live. But first, we'll start off with the freshest and most exhilarating thing right now in sports, and that's the Final Four. We had a fun couple of rounds. The first couple of rounds definitely kept you on the edge of your seat, probably more than the NBA has been, because really all you've been hearing about and all you've been seeing is obviously Steph Curry and the Warriors with this. And, then you had LeBron James trying to get his name out there and try to overtake what the Warriors have been doing by putting out tweets, unfollowing the Cleveland Cavaliers, and, just trying to get attention towards him, and like back to him. As many people, if they know me pretty well, know that I am not the biggest LeBron James fan. Never was, never will be. And I don't even really care if he ended up coming to my team, which is the Lakers. I'm not a fan of LeBron James. I might obviously be biased towards Kobe Bryant, obviously. Ever since LeBron James has come into the league, and, people saying that he would overtake Jordan and overtake Kobe, I took that very hard, I guess you could say. So that kind of kept me away from, ever liking LeBron James or ever liking what he does on the court. Don't get me wrong, the guy's a freak, best athlete. Arguably in sports. I mean, if you really think about it, I mean, the guy's 6'8", 6'9", 250, and he's doing what he's doing on the court. He's faster than anybody on the court. He's more explosive, obviously. You also have Russell Westbrook out there that's arguably the most explosive player on the court. But then you have a guy like Steph Curry, short guy. Short. He's 6 foot, 6'1", but that's short for a basketball player. And he's doing what he's doing on the court, and people take that. Some people love watching it, love watching what he's doing. I mean, the guy. We've all known that he was a great shooter. We knew that. We knew that when he was with Davidson. We knew that. But his handles are what really, put me on the edge of my seat when watching Steph Curry. I love watching this guy basically make his own room to make a shot, get away from a defender, put people on the floor by his crossover. But speaking about Davidson and college basketball, we're gonna go back to the Final Four. We have our Final Four. Obviously, Davidson hasn't been in a while, but another team that nobody really saw in the Final Four, high seed, was the Syracuse Orange, a 10th seed. Lost 5 of their last 6 going into the tournament. So they were most definitely on the bubble. They had their coach suspended, in the middle of the year, Coach Boeheim. So this was a questionable team. Not many people saw this coming. And they really just went against all the odds. They're in the Final Four now. Syracuse Orange in the Final Four. They beat one of, I mean, you could have arguably said that Virginia was the best team in the tournament. I mean, it was so hard this year picking, your bracket, picking the seeds. But Virginia was a legitimate number one seed. I mean, you had, Kansas, you had North Carolina, these teams. Everybody was kind of like, who's going to take it? I mean, many people, including myself, picked Michigan State to go all the way. And basically, I took my bracket within the second day, and I ripped it up because there was no reason to even have it. And I stopped watching. I mean, that's another thing to talk about is, do people watch the NCAA tournament to, watch good basketball, watch exciting basketball, or is it because of the bracket? That's something that you gotta kind of question, really, because I'm not gonna lie when I say this. I was very discouraged when Michigan State lost. Very discouraged. I was very, very pissed off because I thought it was a good pick. Being that this year was so hard to pick, you kind of had to go with, I guess, many people went with the favorites, with the one seeds. I mean, most of the people had Kansas. I mean, in the pool that I was in, most of the people had Kansas, and the other half had Michigan State. And I was kind of pissed off when I saw that because I thought Michigan State being a number 2 seed, I thought a lot of people would go for North Carolina or Kansas. So I figured, you know what, maybe, you'll have a few that will go after Michigan State, obviously. And after, everything was locked in, I saw that a lot of people picked Michigan State. But my other pick that I kind of went out of the box for was Oklahoma in the Final Four, and I actually had them in the championship. So I'm still hoping that they get into the championship, but there's no way of me even winning my pool now because of, everything that's gone on. I mean, everything that happened for me just went down the drain, really. I don't even really have my bracket in front of me. As I said, I ripped it up. So, I can't even really go back on and tell you my picks. I mean, if I really look it up on the computer, I could. Maybe, during the commercial break, I'll look through my bracket and tell you all the teams that I laughed when I saw that they lost. I never won the tournament. I never won any year that I've done a bracket, and it gets so aggravating. So aggravating. I mean, I've gotten so close. But, going back to what I was talking about, I was going outside the box with Oklahoma just because when you looked at the players in this tournament, I felt like Oklahoma had the best player. I felt that they had the best player in Buddy Hield. And you know what? In college basketball, when you got arguably the best player, you're gonna go somewhere at least. And I felt like Oklahoma would go somewhere. And I mean, Buddy Hield is really carrying them right now, and you could see it. And I'm happy I went with that, and I should have went a little bit further with that. But when you also look at, you had Duke as well, with Ingram. Many people say that he could overtake Ben Simmons for the number 1 pick. And being a Lakers fan, I'm kind of excited to see how this turns out. Either way, I think that the Lakers will get a very, very top-notch player, whether it be Buddy Hield, Ingram, or Simmons. To be honest with you, Simmons is really turning me off lately with the whole school thing. I mean, obviously, dropping out of school. I mean, there's really no reason for him to go to school, being that he's a lock for a top 5 pick, at least in the NBA. So he's going to be making a lot of money. But the thing is, when you look at it, it's like, can he be smarter about it? Go, finish off school. Finish off, what you're doing this semester. Why do you have to drop out in the middle? I'm going to the draft, I'm dropping out. Sorry. And I actually, I forget, I think it was on Mike and Mike. They had Shaquille O'Neal on. And Shaquille O'Neal said that, he wants players to play out, their college experience, not just for the experience of college, obviously, but, you have to start to really think about the game, the life after basketball. You really do. Because that's what these kids don't realize. You have to think about that. What happens if Ben Simmons, gets some kind of catastrophic injury where it ends his career? What is he going to do? It's like, what are you going to do? Be smarter than that. It's sad to see, someone, like that do something like that to themselves. You never know what's going to happen. You have no idea how long your career is going to be. He can go out the first game of the season, first game of his career, get an injury that he will never end up playing again. And what is he going to do after college? What is he going to do after that? He's got no college now. So it's just, I thought that was cool what Shaquille O'Neal said. But going on, previewing the Final Four here, Syracuse versus North Carolina. Many people obviously never saw Syracuse being here, especially knocking down Virginia. The way that Virginia looked. I mean, Virginia was up. I think tops was 16 in this game, and Syracuse put on a full court press, and it looked like Virginia never, ever practiced against the press. They looked horrendous when Syracuse went into press. Took this game right back towards the orange, and Richardson really stepped up in the second half and pulled Syracuse into the lead. Ended up keeping the lead, won 68-62. Now they're going up against North Carolina, which, I mean, if you really look at it, I think North Carolina is the best team right now out of the 4. And they're arguably the best team that has touched the court in this tournament here. The other matchup, you have Oklahoma versus Villanova, and I stayed away from Villanova because I thought that they would show up the way that they show up every year, by choking. And I guess, this was the year, obviously, at me not taking them very far, and they went very far. So they screwed me on that. Villanova, Oklahoma, to be honest with you, I think Buddy Hield has taken them so far, and I think Villanova takes this win, and I'm going to go with North Carolina. So, Villanova, North Carolina. Obviously, I was out in the second day, so, it's probably not the smartest to take my advice on this, but that's who I think is going to be in the championship. But I'm going to take a break. New places, new faces in the NFL. I'll let you know who it is and some other news in the NFL next on the Tom and Jerry Sports Show.
Cyberstation USA is the future of radio. Get your business into the online future at the world's largest internet radio station. From banner placement on our homepage to any of our broadcaster stages, commercials on our video player, audio spots on any of our shows, or at the beginning of any of our on-demand broadcasts. Cyberstation USA offers competitive rates with a worldwide reach. A fully integrated one-stop-shop social media broadcast platform. For more information, please contact our sales department at cameo@cyberstationusa.com.
All Noise Radio, Powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. All Noise Radio is an internet radio station that's fully produced by graduates of the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. From modern rock to old school hip hop, country to classical, news, talk, sports, and more. It's the noise you can't ignore. Log on to allnoiseradio.com. Fire up the station. Find out more about your favorite jocks. Get the latest CSB news and more. Plus, you can take All Noise Radio with you on the go for free. Just download the Live 365 app to your iPhone, iPod Touch, or BlackBerry and search All Noise Radio. Check out tomorrow's broadcasters today at allnoiseradio.com. Powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
Tom and Jerry Sports Show featuring Kevin Donlin live every Monday on Zeno Radio and re-airs every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern on Cyberstation USA and the Stitcher app. You can also tune in every Wednesday and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern on All Noise Radio and the Live 365 app.
Follow us on Instagram at Tom and Jerry Sports Show and join the conversation on Twitter at TNJ Sports, or visit our website at tnjsports.weebly.com or call in to 605-562-7085. Press 5 to be heard live.
And we are back. We're going to get into some NFL news here. But first, I was listening to the radio and, over the last 2 weeks, I think, because we were off last week, I never really got to bring this up. I wanted to talk about these two articles that I read. One was from Yahoo Sports, and the other one was from the New York Times. And, it was obviously talking about the whole concussion issue in the NFL. Obviously, it's like beating a dead horse. That's all we've been talking about. And, when I'm talking about it, I'm like on the fence with it, because it's like, people are talking about that these players should not, nobody should be playing football. And I think that's ridiculous to talk about, being that, you can't automatically put CTE and football together. You can't say, these players, no matter what, if you play football, you're getting CTE. You can't say that. So first I'm going to start off with the New York Times one. And, it's basically talking about how the NFL took away or didn't put out every concussion that happened in this time period that they were talking about. They said that they formed this committee in 1994. And for the last 13 years, from about the NFL took this research and spoke about concussions from 96 to 2001, and the confidential data obtained by the Times showed that more than 100 diagnosed concussions were omitted from the studies, including Steve Young and Troy Aikman. And the committee then calculated the rates of concussions using the incomplete data, making them appear less frequent than they actually were. The NFL came out and said that the clubs were not required to submit their data, and not every club did, adding that the missing cases were not part of an attempt to alter suppress the rate of concussions. In 2013, the NFL agreed to a $765 million settlement of a lawsuit in which retired players accused league officials of covering up the risk of concussion. Some players have appealed this settlement, asking for an examination of the committee's concussion research. Some retired players have likened the NFL's handling of the health crisis to that of the tobacco industry, which was notorious for using questionable science to play down the dangers of cigarettes. Now, this was the interesting part, and if you really want to read this whole article, I'm going to tweet out the link to this article, and basically they're talking about the comparison from the tobacco industry and the NFL, and then how some of these people, the higher-ups in the NFL hired people that were had something to do with the tobacco industry. Even the co-owner of the Giants at the time, Preston Tisch, was partly owned a leading cigarette company. So, that's another thing. Obviously, Tisch passed away in 2005, I believe it was. But then there was a lawyer that defended the tobacco industry. So that's another thing. I mean, if you really read through this whole article, it's a long article, and I highlighted a few things when I read it before. But the committee analyzed all concussions diagnosed by medical staffs from 1996 through 2001, and 887 in all. Concussions were recorded by position, time of play, time missed, even the brand of the helmet. The Times found that most teams failed to report all of their players' concussions. Overall, at least 10% of head injuries diagnosed by team doctors were missing from the study, including 2 sustained by Jets receiver Wayne Corbett, who retired several years after from more concussions. Teams, as I said, were not mandated to participate, only strongly encouraged to participate. Also, there, like I said, with Troy Aikman, the database does not include any concussions involving the Dallas Cowboys for all 6 seasons, including 4 to Mr. Aikman that were listed on the NFL's official midweek injury reports or widely reported in the news media. He and many other players, therefore, not included when the committee analyzed the frequency and lasting effects of multiple concussions. Kurt Warner was a part of this that they did not talk about, and he was ruled out for the Pro Bowl in 2000 because of it. So a lot of this is actually pretty interesting to read. So again, I'll tweet out this one now. Actually, just recent. Today, I think it was, Hussein Abdullah, the safety from the Chiefs, is another young player that's retiring at a young age, obviously, because of concussions. And I think he suffered his 5th concussion this past season. So, you're seeing more of this, players retiring early because of injuries, most likely head injuries. But this is another article that I wanted to read from the from Yahoo Sports, kind of like having an argument towards both sides. A former NHL player, Todd Ewan, spent last years of his life with a shadow over him. The former NHL enforcer read the news about other hockey players who had been diagnosed with degenerate brain disease known as CTE after they died. He told his wife, Kelly, if they have CTE, I know I have it. So he had memory loss and depression and wondered if hockey had caused it. He died in September at the age of 49 from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And when the family donated his brain to science, it showed that he had no signs of CTE. So, in a way, in this article, they're talking about how the news and the media is putting out that, the CTE is like, automatically going to happen if you play a contact sport. But it's not the case. So now you're putting out that to these players that it's like that. So now people are thinking about it more and automatically, I guess you could say, self-diagnosing themselves. Now, CTE is a disease that you can only diagnose after death. So this is what's really causing a problem in the world of sports, mainly in the NFL, but also in other contact sports like the NHL. And, people don't talk about soccer in this. Soccer actually has more concussions than football does. I bet you didn't know that. But nobody talks about soccer. And soccer is obviously doing what they can to minimize that by, one of them is, in youth soccer, they're not allowed to do headers. So that's a difference in there. So, when talking about this, Boston University neuropathologist Ann McKee had diagnosed CTE in 90 of 94 deceased NFL players she has studied, and she told a congressional roundtable on March 14th, "I unequivocally think there is a link between football and CTE. The steady stream of headlines about CTE and contact sports will likely continue here this week when NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell holds his press conference." That obviously has passed. Then a sports neurologist, Jeffrey Kutcher, said, "It's not a given, it's not a certainty that an individual playing contact sports will get brain damage. The link is more complex than simple cause and effect." Now, going on past that, basically they're talking about they want to get it proven. Obviously everybody wants to have proof with CTE. And it's hard to do that because you can't diagnose CTE until someone is passed away. And, here it says CTE is proven. We know it exists. We know it's caused by brain damage. And this is from Mark Herseg, chair of the Concussion Task Force in Westchester County, New York. But he also says what we don't know is who's going to get it and who's not going to get it. Most of the cases we see, the ones with CTE had issues during life. They were struggling with something. So while brain damage is the result at autopsy, it's hard to say football led directly to that. High blood pressure can produce brain changes, drug abuse, alcohol abuse. You have to go back and sort out how much of the damage is coming from sports participation and how much is from other aspects of someone's life. There are so many things that affect the brain. It's very hard to isolate sports participation. Put simply, fear could create a downward spiral as much or more than actual concussions do. There's no doubt that repetitive trauma over time can have a detrimental effect on somebody's brain. But there is also real danger in oversimplifying that relationship to the point you're saying people should not play sports because of that risk, which can then affect people's lives for the negative. You're creating depression. You're making people have worse problems with sleep, worse problems with alcohol. You are propagating and the symptoms you're talking about wanting to prevent in the first place. So, in a way, like I said, that, the fear is really causing this and causing an uproar over sports and concussions. And I thought it was, two pretty good articles, definitely good reads. I will tweet out these two links so you can read them on your own time. I just did a couple of quotes that I wanted to talk about, and I never really got to talk about any other NFL news, so I'll bring that up when I get back. But there was a big story out of the Chicago White Sox organization. Obviously, I didn't get to talk about this. This was the big uproar these past 2 weeks, I guess, that put the sports world on its head. I'll give you my opinion when I get back. The Tom and Jerry Sports Show featuring Kevin Donlin live every Monday on Zeno Radio and re-airs every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern on Cyberstation USA and the Stitcher app. You can also tune in every Wednesday and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern on All Noise Radio and the Live 365 app.
Follow us on Instagram at Tom and Jerry Sports Show and join the conversation on Twitter at TNJ Sports or visit our website at tnjsports.weebly.com or call in to 605-562-7085. Press 5 to to be
Ambi
heard
Entertainment
live.
Group and Cyberstation USA are now part of Stitcher, a free radio app for your smartphone. With Stitcher, you can listen to live programming as well as archive radio programming right on your phone. To obtain Stitcher, just go to the App Store for your particular phone. Go to search, then type in Stitcher. That's Stitcher. S-T-I-T-C-H-E-R. S-T-I-T-C-H-E-R. Then download. It's that simple. Stitcher, a free radio app for your smartphone. Convenient access to live and archived Cyberstation USA programming on your mobile phone. That's Stitcher. S-T-I-T-C-H-E-R. Cyberstation USA. Always on the go.
All Noise Radio. Powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. All Noise Radio is an internet radio station that's fully produced by graduates of the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. From modern rock to old school hip hop, country to classical, news, talk, sports, and more. It's the noise you can't ignore. Log on to allnoiseradio.com. Fire up the station. Find out more about your favorite jocks. Get the latest CSB news and more. Plus, you can take All Noise Radio with you on the go for free. Just download the Live 365 app to your iPhone, iPod Touch, or BlackBerry and search All Noise Radio. Check out tomorrow's broadcasters today at allnoiseradio.com. Powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
And we are back. Before I went to break, I was talking about some concussions and everything like that, and I never really got to talk about some other news in the NFL. The big news of the week was that there was some rule changes. Now, when you have these like committees meeting, the owners' meetings and stuff like that, each team can propose a rule change if they want. And a few of them, I think there was 19 that were proposed. Yeah, 19. Now, some were proposed by the committee, others by other teams. So, you had Baltimore proposed 2 of them, Buffalo proposed 1, Carolina, Kansas City proposed 2, Minnesota, Washington proposed 3, and then I think the committee proposed a couple of them. They only passed 7 of them, one of which is permanently moving the line of scrimmage for extra point kicks to the defensive team's 15-yard line. Basically, we saw what that did over the last season, really, and it made it not so much of a lock anymore. And I think they missed more extra points this past season than they have in, a couple of years combined. And I like the rule, and I'm glad they permanently changed it. I'm happy about that. Also, another one that was passed was the illegal chop block. They made all of them, all chop blocks illegal now. You cannot do that. The other one that people were talking about, and I guess you could basically call it the Odell Beckham rule. And that is if a player is penalized for a unsportsmanlike conduct twice in a game, he's automatically ejected. And that kind of was to the uproar of most of the teams. Not many people like that. In a way, to me, I think, I like it, but it also has to be real. You can't sit there and have these refs do judgment calls that they just saw real quick and automatically get someone ejected. I think that this should be something that should be reviewed. I know that people in sports now are talking about pace of time, pace of play, but that's something that should be looked at. I mean, that's a big thing to happen in a game, to have one of your players ejected. And I think it should be right, and I think you should be able to review it. Now, if you go back and look at the tape of that Odell Josh Norman whole debacle of a game, you could review that, and boom, you already know who was in the wrong, what happened. So right away, you could say, oh yeah, you know what, Odell Beckham, he's out of here. Josh Norman, he's okay. Odell Beckham's got to get out of here. So, in a way, I think that it should be reviewed. That's in my opinion. They did pass this rule. I think they passed this rule. I think they're giving it a 1-year whirl, giving it for, a test drive, I guess you could say. I'm going to try to bring up all the other rules that were passed. I'm getting them now. We had permits offensive and defensive play callers on the coaching staffs to use the coach-to-player communication system regardless of whether they are on the field or in the coach's booth. As I said, made all chop blocks illegal. Expands the horse collar rule to include when a defender grabs the jersey at the nameplate or above and pulls a runner toward the ground. Makes it a foul for a delay of game when a team attempts to call a timeout when it's not permitted to do so. Eliminates the 5-yard penalty for an eligible receiver illegally touching a forward pass after being out of bounds and reestablishing himself in bounds, and makes it a loss of down. And eliminates multiple spots of enforcement for a double foul after a change of possession. So those were the rules that were passed. So I'm going to pass on from this, and I'm going to go into the this whole Adam LaRoche White Sox story. Obviously, everybody's been talking about this. I never got the chance to talk about it because we've been gone for the last 2 weeks. And if anybody's wondering, Kevin is going to be gone for a little bit, but I am working on something. I might be able to have him in one area, wherever he is, broadcasting over to you guys, and we'd be able to talk, from wherever he is to wherever I am. So that might happen as early as next week. So I'll look forward to that. And maybe like a FaceTime kind of thing. So we'll see. But also, if you haven't gotten the chance, check out YouTube. I've been putting the video out of me doing the show lately, and obviously me and Kevin went before he, couldn't do the show for a little while. So, we have the video of it, so it's pretty cool. Go check it out on YouTube. This video will probably be up either tomorrow or the next day. But going back into the LaRoche thing, obviously I'm not going to get into it too much because obviously everybody's heard everything about it, really. And a lot of players from the White Sox are in uproar about this, but then you also have players supposedly that went up to Ken Williams and told him that they were a little sick of the kid being around. Now, in a way, to me, a player shouldn't have to change what he does in the locker room because there's someone around, and obviously the kid he's a boy. He's 14 years old. He's been doing this with Adam LaRoche for, not just with the White Sox. He's done this with, the other teams that he's been with. So it's not a surprise. Obviously this has been spoken about between Ken Williams and Adam LaRoche, and there wasn't really a written out thing between the two, but they've talked about it, and Ken Williams said it was all right for him to be in the locker room. Now, going back to what I was saying, he's a boy, and I don't think a player should have to change what he does in the locker room. So I think Adam LaRoche should know that what he's putting his son into, what kind of environment he's putting his son into. He's going to hear curses. He's probably going to see unclothed men. So, he should know what he's putting his son into. And that's his prerogative. If that's what he wants to do, if that's, what kind of environment he wants to bring his son into, so be it. Whatever. If he wants to hear curses, he wants to, it's whatever. And Drake, which is his son, has been around it. So, many people have brought up, where's this kid, why isn't this kid in school? Well, they already set that up. They already have an agreement with the school that sometimes I think they have like half a day that they go in for. Others, Drake is homeschooled. They have tutors and all that stuff. And to me, in spring training, why not have him around? Who cares? It's spring training. But obviously some players were against it. And, another thing is, it's a little harder when you're talking about, him being around for the 162-game season. That's a little crazy. And you can't blame Adam LaRoche for this because, he wants to be around his family. When you're a baseball player, you're gone for, look how many months there is in a year, for a season. And then you're adding, you're going into spring training for, a month and a half or so. So, you have most of the year without being able to see your family, especially if your family doesn't live in the hometown of your team. Many people, like I think Alex Rodriguez is a perfect example. I think his family lives in Miami. But during the season, he lives in New York. So, I could be wrong about that, but that's what I think it is. That's just me guessing, I guess. But, that's he wants to be around his family, and you can't blame him for that. If it started to hinder his play, then you sit him down and you talk to him about it. But I think this whole thing went awry with, everything. And, supposedly players were saying that they weren't even going to get on the bus to play in a spring training game because of this, that they were lied to and all this stuff. So it was a crazy story. And Adam LaRoche left $13 million on the table because of this. And there's nothing more that you can do but to commend him for that. Not many people may leave $13 million on the table because you can't have your son in the locker room. And I understand where people are coming from. Oh, you know what? You can't bring your son to work. You don't bring your son to work every day. But, hey, that's what happened, his basically most of his career. So, you can't blame him for wanting to have his son around. And, if it turns out to be, that he plays well, and, they turn this into, the whole Ken Griffey deal with the Yankees, and, how the Yankees didn't want him around as much, and, Junior really took that to heart. And he turned it into, when he went into the pros, that he was going to kill the Yankees as much as he could. And he did that. But when I get back, I'm going to talk about some NHL news. And it's obviously, we're going to talk about because there's about 8 games left. But there's other news in NHL that I want to talk about that many people haven't heard of, I guess. So when I get back, I'm going to talk about that, and another legend is calling it a career, but not so fast. We'll talk about it when we get back on the Tom and Jerry Sports Show.
This is the evolution of radio.
Cyberstation USA.
Our inventions change us. They make us think differently.
Something new added to the real world.
The leading edge of evolution.
That development has got to be delivered.
CyberstationUSA.com.
The most sophisticated that I've ever seen.
I'm not sure exactly what the future is, but I'm pretty sure it's not going away.
Connecticut School of Broadcasting founder Dick Robinson.
You know, the media business has changed a lot since we opened our doors in 1964. Now media content is everywhere, on air, online, on the go. More than ever, companies are looking for people to help drive this new media.
At Connecticut School of Broadcasting, you'll get hands-on training on the latest software and equipment in a matter of months, not years. Connecticut School of Broadcasting has placed thousands of grads in broadcast media careers.
It's all about versatility. You see, at a radio station, if you also know how to shoot, edit, and post videos, you become a pretty hot commodity. That's the training you get at Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
Connecticut School of Broadcasting, with locations up and down the East Coast, from Massachusetts to Miami. Call 1-800-TV-RADIO or log on to GoCSB.com. Connecticut School of Broadcasting, the nation's oldest and largest group of broadcast media schools, redefining training in radio, TV, and new media. Get trained. Get connected. 1-800-TV-RADIO.
Tom and Jerry Sports Show featuring Kevin Donlin live every Monday on Zeno Radio and re-airs every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern on Cyberstation USA and the Stitcher app. You can also tune in every Wednesday and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern on All Noise Radio and the Live 365 app.
Follow us on Instagram at Tom and Jerry Sports Show and join the conversation on Twitter at TNJ Sports, or visit our website at tnjsports.weebly.com or call in to 605-562-7085. Press 5 to be heard live.
Yeah. Webby. Yeah.
All I need is one song, one line. All I need is one break to survive. All I get is one chance.
And we are back. And I was talking about, some NHL news, and, I'm going to give a quick, basically what's going on right now in the NHL, and the East is really starting to heat up, especially with mine and Kevin's team, the Islanders, struggling ever so mightily with, having the injury to Halak. They really kind of took a step back. They are 3-5-2 in their last 10 games. They have 89 points. They're behind the Pittsburgh Penguins, who have 92, Rangers 95, and Washington definitely just running away with it. And we're looking at the conference standings right now. The Islanders are in 6th place, above Boston by 1 point, and above Philly by 3. I went to the Islander Philly game the other day. The first time I was in Barclays Center, and I'm not a big fan of. I mean, the place is beautiful. I'm just not a big fan of the seating and everything, or the seating arrangement with it being hockey and everything like that. But this whole ending of the season is definitely going to be an interesting one, especially for Islander fans. But, what I really wanted to talk about was the expansion draft. Not many people might have heard about this, but the NHL is planning to add a team or two, and expanding them. Looks the two cities that are involved, and really the only candidates are Las Vegas and Quebec City. The league is expected to make a formal announcement in June, with the expansion draft expected to be held a year later. So, most likely, from what I'm reading, it looks like there'll be an expansion draft next June, not this June coming up, next June, and that's some big news, because teams will be losing players. And what I mean by that is that when you're looking at it, teams will be losing. If there's one team, they lose one player. If there's two teams, they lose two players. And there's some stipulations between that. If a player is 2 years or less into the league, they are protected and they can't go. They can't leave their team. So that's, for some promising players, that's good news for the team. But when you're looking at it, there's other things. The existing club could protect either one goalie, 3 defensemen, and 7 forwards, or one goalie and 8 skaters at any position. And like I said, players with 2 years or less experience on the entry-level deals, along with drafted but unsigned prospects, would be exempt. Details remain to be worked out between the league and the NHL Players Association, especially rules for players carrying no movement, no trade clauses. It's believed that those with no movement clauses could be exempt because they cannot be traded or waived. And that's the big problem with this whole thing, is the whole no movement clause. And I read like a whole big article about it, and it's interesting because you don't really know what they're going to do, because you start looking at some of these players that have no movement clause, and in a way that some of these teams may not want to bring them back, but because they have a no movement clause, that player could not be used to be dropped for this expansion draft. So that's the problem with this whole thing. What this means, this is a quote from the article. What this means is that on June 20th, or whenever the expansion draft is held, a player on a soon-to-be expiring contract is technically still the property of his old team. Even if that team has no intention of re-signing him, still at first glance, this doesn't seem to be much of an issue. If a team has no interest in re-signing a player, they could just choose to leave him unprotected in an expansion draft. The player doesn't waste a coveted protection spot, and the team can move on in a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, 2 other expansion draft rules throw a wrench in that line of thinking: the no movement clause and something they call the 25% rule. In all of the discussions about potential expansion draft rules, a couple execs warned the 25% rule did not get enough play. If you spend to the projected ceiling of $74 million, you'll have to expose at least $18.5 million of unprotected salary. That's not going to be easy, especially if players with no move clauses can't be exposed. So now, if that is the deal, then players that have big contracts can't be protected. So technically, if you have to let $18.5 million of salary go with this whole expansion draft, you're talking about big players being dropped. Especially if, because what happens is, and I know it might be confusing, and this is another article that I will, I'll tweet out. So definitely, if you don't already, follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter at TNJ Sports. That's the letter TNJ. So, check us out. I'm obviously constantly tweeting, especially when the draft comes. So the NFL draft comes around. So, follow us for that. But, this whole thing is pretty interesting. And, it's definitely worth the read. The NHL could also choose to require teams to expose 25% of their 2016-2017 cap spend, but mandate that expiring contracts cannot be included in the 25%. Considering Philadelphia's $71.87 million projected cap obligation, that would mean that they would be forced to expose a shade under $18 million worth of non-expiring contracts. So basically, you cannot use an expiring contract in part of the expansion draft. So a player that has an expiring contract and you want to kind of use him in that expansion draft so that you don't have to get rid of players that you want to be a part of your team, you can't do that. So it'd end up being that you have to get rid of a player that you may want to keep, and you're obviously you can protect players. Like the Islanders would obviously protect John Tavares, Johnny Boychuk, Nick Leddy, guys like that, the big players on their team. But another good example that I was reading was Ben Bishop of the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm trying to find where it says in here. A few of these would, they listed here Antoine Vermette, Chris Pronger, Dennis Weidman, James Wisniewski, Jerome McGinley, Patrick Sharp, Pavel Datsyuk, Andrew Ferentz, Thomas Vanek, R.J. Umberger, Joe Thornton, Patrick Marleau, Ben Bishop. A few of these would be easy to swallow for their respective teams. Detroit likely wouldn't have an issue spending a protection slot on Pavel Datsyuk, and the same with the San Jose Sharks and Joe Thornton. But imagine a scenario where Arizona has to protect Chris Pronger despite the fact that he hasn't played since 2011. What if Tampa Bay loses young star Andrei Vasilevsky because the team can only keep one goalie and Ben Bishop's no movement clause requires it to be him? So that's the thing. Like, you're only allowed to protect one goalie. And if they have a no movement clause, you have to protect them, because you have to use a protection slot for them. So it's crazy. I was reading this article and I was like, wow, this is insane. Just for that. I mean, look at that. Tampa Bay Lightning might lose a top prospect, a top goalie prospect, which obviously everybody knows that it's very hard to get a hold of a great goalie. I mean, it's kind of like the same thing with the NFL and a quarterback. Could you imagine that? I mean, it's insane. And like I said, I'm gonna tweet out the articles that I have here, from the Hockey News and USA Today Sports, and I have another one here, also from Hockey News as well. And they bring up some players in it that that you'll look at that may have to go and stuff like that. But I thought these articles were a good read, and knowing me, I do not like to read at all. I hate reading. But this was interesting. These articles that I read today were interesting, whether it be the concussions or this expansion draft stuff. And also quick, Gary Bettman, the commissioner of the NHL, says the salary cap could rise $3 million in 2016-2017. So that's going to go from $71.4 million this year, to which went up 2.4 from 2014, and then it's going to go up to obviously $74 million. So keep an eye on that. That's going to be pretty cool for some hockey teams. But that will do it for the show. The clock on the wall says that is all. But obviously check out the NHL these last 2 weeks really. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take a phone call before I leave. Hey, what's going on? You're on the Tom and Jerry Sports Show. Hello?
Hey, Jerry Knapp.
Hey, what's going on?
What are your predictions for the Yankees this year?
It's so hard when, I'm looking at it, the pitching staff is obviously the question. I think today Tanaka pitches, or tomorrow Tanaka pitches. So Joe Girardi said that he wants to check him out before naming him the opening day starter. But, I think they're going to be a good team. I'm not really worried about them. I think they win the East, to be honest with you. But overall, it's a question mark. It's been a question mark for the Yankees for a very long time. So that's basically. I think that the Yankees could at least win 90 games.
I agree.
So you think that they could do anything in the playoffs?
They're the Yankees, of course they can.
Yeah, I mean, every time we get into the playoffs, the only thing I worry about is our hitting. But I
think Castro will have a big year.
So do I. I like that deal. I think our infield has gotten really, really good up the middle with Didi and Castro. The biggest thing with the Yankees, obviously, every year is injuries. They have to stay healthy. And if they stay healthy, I think that they could be, a very good team this year. And I think they can make some kind of run in the playoffs.
I agree. You do a great job, Jerry Knapp.
Thank you. Thanks for the call. Have a good one. But as I said, the clock on the wall says that is all. I am going to call it quits today. That will do it for the Tom and Jerry Sports Show. Check us out next week. We'll talk about whatever news is out there, and we'll keep talking about this NHL playoffs coming up, the MLB season coming up, and obviously the NFL draft coming up. But that will do it. I'm Jerry. Be breezy.
Thanks for listening to another episode of The Tom and Jerry Show.